The first time I realized my wife might have brought her lover into my house, he was standing 6 feet from my grill with a polite smile on his face while people I loved sang happy birthday to me. I did not understand that in the moment. Not fully. What I understood was that something was wrong with Emily from the second she stepped out of that car, and by the time I finally learned why, my birthday had already become the day my marriage split open in front of me. My name is Ryan. At the time I was 34, married, working steady, living in a modest house on the south side of Indianapolis, trying to build the kind of life that feels simple when you describe it and complicated when you actually have to protect it. I was not rich, I was not flashy, but I worked hard, paid my bills, kept food in the fridge, and tried to be the kind of husband who made a home feel calm. That year, I decided to celebrate my birthday with a cookout at my place. Nothing fancy. I told everybody I'd cover the food and meat, and if they wanted beer, soda, or anything stronger, they could bring their own. My sister came, a few cousins, 2 guys from work, some neighbors I'd known long enough to trust around an open cooler. It was one of those late summer Saturdays when the heat still hung in the air after sunset and the smell of charcoal got into your clothes. Emily worked that day at a clothing store in the mall. She told me she might be late, which was fine. I remember telling people she'd come straight from work and probably just needed a shower and a change of clothes when she got in. I said it casually because I had no reason then to say anything else. By the time she arrived, the cookout was already in full swing. Music was playing low from a speaker near the patio. I was at the grill, sweat on my back, flipping steaks and chicken, keeping an eye on the burgers. Everybody was loose and laughing. Then I heard a car door slam out front and looked up. Emily had brought a co-worker with her, a woman she introduced as Nicole, and with Nicole came a man Emily said was Nicole's boyfriend, Aaron. The 3 of them had ridden over together in his car. That part by itself did not mean anything. People bring people, co-workers tag along, last-minute guests happen. If she had walked in warm and normal, I probably would not have remembered their names. But she did not walk in warm and normal. She barely kissed me. Not even a real kiss, just a quick little peck, thin and distracted, and then a flat happy birthday before she sort of waved toward everybody as a group instead of greeting anyone properly. She did not hug my sister, did not come over to see what was on the grill, did not ask if I needed help. Her eyes felt elsewhere. Her whole body felt elsewhere. Then she said she needed a shower and clean clothes and went inside. Nicole and Aaron went in with her. I remember staring after them for half a second because something about that looked off. Not wrong in any clear way, just off. I went back to the grill because 10 people were waiting on dinner, and because when your mind catches something it cannot explain, sometimes it throws it aside to keep the peace. A while later they came back out, but Emily stayed close to them in a way that bothered me almost immediately. She hovered by the 2 of them instead of mixing with the guests. She barely checked on anybody. If someone tried to talk to her, she answered, then drifted back. It was like an invisible rope, kept pulling her toward that little cluster. I held it in for a while. I did not want to be the jealous husband making a scene at his own birthday cookout over nothing. But after maybe 20 minutes of watching her orbit those 2 like the rest of us were furniture, I called her aside near the side fence. I kept my voice low and asked why she was acting like that. I told her people had come to celebrate with us, and she was barely speaking to anyone. She gave me this hard look right away, like I had interrupted something important, and said Nicole and Aaron did not know anybody there, and she was not going to leave them standing alone. That answer irritated me more than I expected. I told her they were adults, not abandoned children, and that maybe she could let her friend spend 5 minutes with her own boyfriend, while she at least made the rounds and said hello to people. I meant it half as a joke, half as a nudge, but Emily did not take it that way. Her face changed, tight, defensive. She said I was always trying to make something out of nothing. That was not true. And the fact that she said it so fast stuck with me. Then she turned her back on me and went straight back to them. I stood there for a second with smoke from the grill blowing across the yard and felt that little drop in the stomach a man feels when the mood of a night has shifted and he does not know yet how bad it's going to get. Still, there was food to serve. People were hungry. My cousin was asking where the buns were. One of the kids had dropped a plate. The music cut out and had to be restarted. Life kept moving, and I let myself get swallowed by it. At some point after dark, I noticed the three of them had gone back inside again. This time they stayed in there a long while. I was busy enough that I could not track exactly when they came out or if they came out together. I just remember glancing toward the kitchen door more than once and feeling annoyed, then guilty for feeling annoyed, then annoyed again. It was my birthday, my food, my guests, my house, and my wife was acting like she had shown up to some separate event happening just beyond my reach. By close to midnight, the party started thinning out. Couples left first, then neighbors, then my work buddies. The easy noise drained out of the yard and left behind paper plates, half-empty cups, and that tired silence that settles after company goes home. Aaron and Nicole left not long before the end. I saw the car pull away. Emily barely acknowledged it. She just went inside and disappeared into the bedroom without really saying goodnight to anybody. That was strange enough that even my sister noticed. Carly was the last one there, helping me gather bottles and stack plates before she headed home. When she looked around and asked where Emily was, I said she had probably gone to bed with a headache or something. I was covering for her automatically. It embarrassed me to admit I had no idea what was going on with my own wife. Carly took a few steps toward the driveway, then stopped and turned back in a way I still remember clearly because her expression changed first. It was not casual anymore. It was cautious. She lowered her voice and said she did not know if she should tell me something. I asked her what she meant. Then she asked me who exactly that couple was that Emily had brought. I said the woman was her co-worker, and the man was supposed to be the co-worker's boyfriend. At least that was how Emily had introduced them. Carly kept looking at me for a second too long, and I felt my chest tighten before she even spoke again. She said she had walked inside earlier looking for the downstairs bathroom, and when she passed the den, she had seen Emily and Aaron standing very close together. Too close. Then, in the next second, according to Carly, they kissed. Not a friendly cheek kiss, not a joke, a real kiss. Nicole was right there. Carly said Nicole had been watching them, and then nudged Emily the second she noticed someone else had entered. After that, Emily and Aaron broke apart so fast, Carly almost convinced herself she might have seen it wrong. But she did not think she had. I remember the sound of those words hitting me more than the words themselves. It felt like the backyard went hollow. Like all the leftover noise of the party got sucked away, and all I could hear was the fizz of a forgotten soda can on the patio table. I asked Carly if she was sure. She said no, not absolutely. She kept saying it happened fast. A glance, a fraction of a second. But then she repeated the part about Nicole being there and nudging Emily, and that detail lodged in me like a splinter because it was too weird to invent, too specific. I asked why she had not told me sooner. She said she had not wanted to ruin my birthday unless she was certain, and even now she hated bringing it up. Then she looked me straight in the face and told me to pay attention because something was wrong. After that, she left, and I was alone with that. I did not even finish cleaning up. I left trays uncovered on the patio table and went inside feeling like I had swallowed ice. Emily was already in bed, lying on her side, breathing heavy like she was asleep. I touched her shoulder and tried to wake her. She mumbled something, pulled away and turned her back. For a second, I almost shook her harder and demanded an answer right then. I did not. Partly because she really seemed out cold, partly because I had never been in that position before. standing beside my own bed wondering whether my marriage had just changed while I was outside serving ribs to my friends. I kept thinking maybe Carly had been mistaken. Maybe she had walked in on some weird angle, some stupid misunderstanding. I needed that to be true more than I wanted a fight in the middle of the night. I barely slept. Every time I drifted, I pictured that scene the way Carly described it. Emily with that man, Nicole watching, a nudge, a separation too quick to explain. By morning I felt sick from lack of sleep, and from the kind of suspicion that has not become knowledge yet, but has already poisoned the air. I tried to talk to Emily before work. The second I mentioned Nicole and Aaron, she changed, not dramatically, more like a door sliding shut inside her. She started moving faster, said she was running late, said we would talk later, said I was acting strange. She never answered the question I actually asked, which was simple. Why were you acting like that with them? That Sunday she was off, and I thought we would finally have the conversation. Instead, she spent the entire day avoiding it, with a level of skill that made me feel crazy. Every time I came near her, she found some reason to move. Laundry, the bathroom, a quick errand, a headache. She was in the house, but unreachable, like someone walking around behind glass. By evening, I told her plainly that she had not been herself since the cookout. She said it was my imagination. Then she said I was the one acting weird. I watched her say that, and I remember thinking this was the part where something invisible starts becoming real, because if she had laughed it off naturally, if she had looked me in the eye and said Carly had misread something, maybe I could have grabbed onto that. Instead, she gave me denial without substance, anger without explanation, distance without reason. Over the next few days, things got worse. Emily started coming home later than usual. She was more short-tempered, more distracted. She kept her phone close to her body in a way she never had before. Little things changed. She took calls in the other room. She started showering almost immediately after getting home. She slept, turned away from me. Our house still looked the same, but it no longer felt shared. And once your mind links two things, it is hard to unlink them. Carly's story lived in me all day long. Emily's behavior fed it every night. We started arguing over nothing and everything. Dishes, timing, tone, questions, silence. I kept waiting for the moment she would sit down and tell me what was actually going on. She never did. Finally, during one of those fights, I said it out loud. I told her Carly had seen her kissing Aaron at my birthday cookout. Emily exploded so fast it almost looked rehearsed. She called Carly crazy. Then she called both of us crazy. She said I was paranoid, insecure, obsessed. She said she was sick of my attitude and sick of me turning every little thing into a problem. There was so much fury in her face that for one stupid second, I wondered if maybe I had truly lost my grip and accused an innocent woman based on a bad angle and my own wounded pride. But the anger did not come with clarity. That was the problem. It came with escape. She stormed out and said she needed air. She stayed gone all day. I called, texted, called again. Nothing. Around 11:30 that night, she finally sent me one message saying she was sleeping at her sister's place and that we would talk the next day. Something about that message felt wrong immediately. Short, cold, too clean. So I called her sister. Emily was not there. I called her mother. Not there either. At that point, I stopped feeling hurt and started feeling scared in a different way. Because when your spouse lies about where she is the same day you accuse her of kissing another man, your mind does not go anywhere decent. I did not sleep that night either. Monday around lunch, I could not take it anymore and drove to the store where she worked. I figured if she was avoiding me at home, at least she would have to face me in daylight. But when I got there, one of the girls at the register told me Emily had not come in that day. That hit me hard. Now she was missing from work too, unreachable by phone, lying about where she spent the night. I stood there near a rack of sale blouses with store music playing overhead, and had the strange thought that my real life had started to sound like somebody else's mess. I called Nicole. She claimed she had no idea where Emily was. Maybe she was telling the truth. Maybe not. At that point, everybody sounded false to me. Instead of going back to work, I drove home on instinct. Something had been tugging at me all morning, some stupid little thought that would not let go. If Emily had skipped work, where else would she be? She was at the house. I found her in our bedroom packing. Not a dramatic scene at first. No shattered glass, no screaming. Just drawers open, clothes folded badly into bags, toiletries spread across the dresser. The quiet violence of someone preparing to remove herself from your life while you are supposed to be somewhere else. She looked stunned when I walked in. I asked what she was doing. She said she was leaving. Just like that, I asked why, asked where this was coming from, asked how a marriage turns into suitcases without a conversation. She said we were not working anymore, that things had been bad, that she needed out. It was one of the most insulting moments of my life, not because she wanted to leave, but because of how small and dishonest she made it sound. Not working anymore. As if what I had seen building in her since my birthday was just some vague compatibility issue. As if the timing meant nothing. As if I was supposed to nod and accept the paper-thin version of events she offered. I told her no. We were going to talk right then. She said she had nothing to say. Then she started crying. That part threw me. Real crying. Shaky breathing, tears, face crumpling. For a moment, I thought maybe there was some other problem, something I had not even considered. Some debt, some illness, some family crisis. But every time I asked what was going on, she only cried harder and refused to explain. I felt trapped between pity and rage. I kept asking whether this had anything to do with Aaron. She would not answer. I asked if there was somebody else. She would not answer that either. Finally, she got irritated, wiped her face, and snapped that she was done talking. Then she dragged one of the bags past me like she expected me to step aside and make her exit easier. I followed her outside, still asking where she was going. She did not tell me. After she left, I drove to her mother's house. Not there. Drove to her sister's. Not there either. Her mother looked genuinely shocked when I said Emily had moved out. That mattered to me because it meant whatever Emily was doing, even her family was not fully in on it. The days after that were ugly, so I kept trying to reach her, calling, texting, going by the store. At first I told myself I wanted to save the marriage. That was true, but not the whole truth. I also wanted an answer clean enough to stand on. If she was leaving me for another man, I needed to hear it said. If I was wrong, I needed proof. I could not live in that swamp between suspicion and certainty. The next time I went to her store, she met me with open hostility. She asked what I was doing there and said I needed to stop following her. Following her. Like I was some random creep instead of her husband trying to understand why she had vanished from our home and lied about where she slept. Customers were nearby. Co-workers could hear. I remember feeling humiliated and angry, and still somehow not fully ready to believe she was capable of what all the signs were pointing to, because a part of me kept going back to the same impossible detail. Who brings a lover into her husband's birthday cookout and introduces him as someone else's boyfriend? That was the detail my mind kept circling. It was so bold it almost felt unreal. Too reckless. Too dirty. The kind of thing a man rejects, because accepting it means admitting he has been standing inside a level of disrespect he never thought possible. For another few days I watched the clock, watched my phone, watched myself becoming someone I did not like. Jumpier, meaner, half distracted at work. My appetite was gone. My sleep was wrecked. Every ordinary task felt connected to a question that refused to let me go. Then one evening, I made a decision I am not proud of. I parked outside Emily's store before closing and waited. I told myself it was for closure, for one last attempt to speak face to face. In reality, I already suspected more than that. I was waiting to see where she went. The mall strip was lit in that harsh commercial glow that makes everything look flatter than it is. I stayed low in the driver's seat and watched employees filter out in twos and threes. My hands were sweating on the steering wheel. I kept telling myself I would leave if she came out alone and drove to her sister's or her mother's or anywhere ordinary. She came out just before 8, and before I could even step out of my car, she crossed the street and got into a vehicle parked near the curb. Not her car. A man was driving. The cold I felt in my stomach then was immediate and clean. No confusion. No maybe. I waited a couple seconds, then started my engine and followed. I kept enough distance that I would not be obvious at lights. The traffic thinned as we moved south. Strip malls gave way to darker blocks, then quiet residential streets. My heart was beating hard enough that I could feel it in my throat. I told myself I still did not know for sure who was driving. Told myself it could be a cousin, a friend, a rideshare, anything. But I already knew I was lying to myself. They turned into a neighborhood in Greenwood and finally stopped in front of a single-story house with a chain-link gate and a narrow driveway. I parked farther back, under a weak streetlight, and watched. The driver got out first, opened the gate, drove the car into the driveway, then climbed out again to close it behind them. It was too dark to see his face clearly from where I was, but that did not matter anymore. Emily was there. She got out with the ease of somebody who knew the place. Then both of them went inside. I sat in my car for maybe 15 minutes, long enough to leave, long enough to imagine a dozen endings, long enough to get angry, then sick, then numb. I could have driven away and spared myself the exact shape of what came next. Sometimes I wonder if that would have been better, but uncertainty had already eaten so much of me that I could not take one more night of not knowing. I got out, walked to the gate and found it locked with a padlock. Instead of doing the normal thing, which would have been knocking or turning around, I climbed the fence. I was so keyed up, I barely felt the scrape against my arm. I crossed the yard to the front door and knocked 3 times hard. Then I stood there in the dark, breathing like I had run a mile. A male voice from inside asked who it was. I did not answer. I knocked again. There was a pause, then the sound of keys and footsteps, and when the door opened, the man standing there looked at me with the exact same shock I felt looking back at him. It was Aaron, the same man who had come to my birthday cookout as Nicole's supposed boyfriend. For a second, neither of us moved. His face lost color so fast it looked almost unnatural. Mine probably did too. There are moments in life when your mind does not need time to process. It just lands. Every loose piece snaps into place at once, and the truth arrives whole. Before I could say anything else, I heard Emily's voice from down the hall, asking who was at the door. Then she said, soft and intimate and casual in a way that nearly dropped me where I stood, "Is it the pizza, babe? Babe." Not even whispered, not careful, just normal. Then she walked into view behind him. The second she saw me, all the color left her face too, but it did not turn into shame. Not first. First it turned into panic, and right after that, it turned into fury. She demanded to know if I had followed her. I could barely speak. I remember staring at her, then at him, then at the house around them, and feeling my body go strangely weak. On the drive there, I had imagined violence. I had imagined dragging him onto the lawn. I had imagined screaming. Instead, I felt drained all at once, like somebody had pulled the bones out of me, because there it was. Not a suspicion anymore, not Carly's uncertain glance, not a change in Emily's mood, not a late arrival home, not a lie about sleeping at her sister's. Proof. She had lied to my face, brought him into my home, let me grill food for him, let my friends and family stand feet away from him, and then acted offended when I sensed something was wrong. I looked at Aaron and realized with a fresh wave of disgust what the setup had been that night. Nicole was not there as a girlfriend. Nicole was cover, a prop, a shield, maybe a friend helping them, maybe something worse. I did not know yet, but suddenly my own birthday cookout looked different in my mind. Every strange detail relit from another angle. Why Emily barely kissed me, why she clung to them, why she disappeared inside with them, why Carly had seen what she saw, why Emily changed after that night like the mask had already slipped too far to put back on properly. Standing there on that porch, I understood that the marriage had probably been over before I knew it. I just had not been informed. Emily started threatening to call the police if I did not leave. Aaron stood there stiff and silent, which somehow made him seem even smaller. I wanted him to say something, deny it, admit it, show some sign he understood what kind of line he had crossed. He did not. He just stood between me and the hallway like a coward who had inherited a mess he helped create. I had never felt humiliation like that in my life. Not just betrayal, exposure. Because it was not only that my wife had another man, it was the way she did it. The disrespect had layers. She brought him into my house under a fake label. She let me shake his hand, let me host him, let me serve him food on my birthday while she moved around him with a secret I was apparently stupid enough not to see. There on that porch, with Emily calling him babe and telling me to get out, I realized my sister had not been mistaken at all. She had probably seen only the tip of it. For a few seconds I stayed on that porch because my body had not caught up to what my mind already knew. Emily kept telling me to leave. Aaron still said nothing. I remember looking past him into that house and noticing stupid details my brain had no business noticing in a moment like that. A lamp on in the living room, a throw blanket hanging off the arm of a couch, a pair of women's sandals by the wall that I recognized as Emily's. It was like my humiliation had furniture now. I asked her one question, just one. How long? She did not answer it. Instead, she told me I was trespassing, that I needed to get out before things got worse, that I had no right to show up there like that. The nerve of hearing that from my own wife, standing in another man's doorway after lying to me for days, did something ugly to me. I felt rage rise up so fast I thought I might lose control. But even then, right there, I hit a line inside myself I could not cross. I wanted to shove Aaron through that doorway. I wanted to grab Emily by the shoulders and force the truth out of her in full sentences. I wanted at least one of them to feel the same chaos they had pushed into me. But my father raised me with one thing drilled deep enough that it still held even with my whole life shaking. No matter how humiliated you are, no matter how furious, once you put your hands on somebody in anger, you hand them part of the story. I was not willing to become the violent husband they could point to later to make themselves look less filthy. So I did not touch either one of them. That was my limit. I stood there breathing hard, looked at Emily one more time, and asked her if this was really who she was now. She stared back at me with that same hard, defensive face she had been wearing since my birthday, except now it finally matched the situation. There was no confusion left to hide behind, no misunderstanding, no headache, no vague talk about us not working, just the truth in plain clothes. She told me to leave again, so I did. I climbed back over the fence because the gate was still locked, got into my car, and sat there gripping the wheel so hard my fingers hurt. I could not drive right away. I was shaking too badly. The house was still in my mirrors. I could have sat there all night staring at it like an idiot, but eventually survival took over, and I pulled away. The drive home is mostly a blur, except for one red light, where I remember looking at my own face in the rearview mirror and thinking I looked older than I had 2 hours earlier. At the house, I did not go inside right away. I sat in the driveway with the engine off and the neighborhood quiet around me and tried to understand the size of what had happened, not the affair itself. That part, awful as it was, had become clear. What I could not wrap my head around was the calculation of it. The level of nerve it took for Emily to walk that man into my birthday cookout, introduce him under a fake role, and move him around my home like I was too blind to notice. That was the part that kept cutting deeper than the cheating itself. Eventually I went inside. Our house felt like a stage after a play nobody wanted to admit had ended. Some of her things were gone, some were still there. A hair tie on the bathroom counter, a cardigan over the back of a chair, her coffee mug in the drying rack. Evidence everywhere that she had lived there, and evidence now that she had started removing herself piece by piece. Before I even understood, I had become the last person told. I did not sleep. Sometime after midnight, I started opening drawers and closets and taking stock, not because I was calm enough to make decisions, but because I needed movement, needed proof of something solid. By 2 in the morning, I knew which clothes were missing, which shoes were gone, which toiletries she had taken. It was half inventory, half grief. Around 6, I called in sick to work. Then I called Carly. I told her she had been right. There was a long silence on the phone. Then she asked if I was okay, and I laughed in this strange flat way because okay was not even a useful word anymore. I told her I had followed Emily after work and found her at Aaron's house. Carly did not interrupt once. When I finished, she just said she was coming over. She brought coffee and that quiet kind of anger family carries when they know somebody has done you dirty. She did not try to fill the air with easy comfort. She just sat with me at the kitchen table while sunlight came through the blinds and turned our dirty mugs into little bright shapes on the wood. At some point, she asked if I was going to tell Emily's family. I said I did not know yet. Part of me wanted to blast the whole thing wide open. Part of me wanted to disappear. Carly told me one thing that mattered. She said whatever I did next, I needed to stop thinking like a husband trying to save a marriage and start thinking like a man protecting himself from somebody willing to lie this hard. That sentence landed, because until then, if I am honest, some piece of me still thought maybe Emily would call and explain. Maybe there was context I did not have. Maybe she would break down and tell the truth, and we would at least be dealing with the same reality. Carly's point was that Emily had already shown me how she intended to move, quietly, strategically, without protecting me at all. So that day I started changing practical things. I called my bank and made sure my personal account was secure. We had one joint checking account for bills, but most of my direct deposit went into my own. I photographed recent statements, took pictures of the furniture, electronics, and anything that might matter later. I gathered important documents, mortgage papers, insurance, tax records. I did it in a fog, but I did it. Then I called a lawyer. I never thought I'd be the kind of man sitting in an office talking about infidelity, property, and separation like they were normal categories. But by that afternoon I was there, telling a woman in a navy blazer that my wife had moved out and I had found her with another man. She listened without drama, asked sharp questions, and told me 2 things that steadied me. First, I did not need to chase a confession to know where I stood. Second, if Emily had already established another place she was staying and had left voluntarily, I needed to document everything and keep contact limited and calm from that point forward. Calm. That word irritated me because calm was the opposite of what I felt. But I understood the strategy. The lawyer said cases get uglier when hurt people start reacting emotionally in ways that can be screenshotted, replayed, or twisted. I walked out of that office with a folder in my hand and the unpleasant realization that heartbreak, once it crosses a line, turns administrative. Emily texted me that evening for the first time since the porch, not to apologize, not to explain, to ask when she could come get the rest of her things. I stared at that message for a long time. There was no mention of what I had seen, no acknowledgement of the lie, the affair, the humiliation, just logistics. I could almost hear her flattening the story in her own mind into some sanitized version where we were simply two adults handling a separation. I answered that she could come Saturday morning and that Carly would be there with me. She took almost an hour to reply, then said fine. That one word told me she understood exactly why I had said Carly would be present. I did not want Emily alone in the house with me anymore. I did not trust her version of events, and after everything that had happened, I was not going to give her a private scene she could later reframe. The days leading up to Saturday were some of the longest of my life. News traveled fast, though not all of it accurately. My mother called after hearing from Carly that Emily had left. I told her enough of the truth that she would stop asking questions. Emily's mother called too, voice shaky, saying she still did not understand what was going on. I kept it respectful and told her only that Emily had moved out and I had found her with another man. That woman went dead silent. Then she whispered, "Oh my God," like somebody who had suspected trouble but not this exact shape of it. I also called Nicole. I did not do it for comfort. I did it because one part of the story still bothered me beyond the obvious. Her role. She answered on the second ring and sounded nervous immediately. I asked her if she knew Emily and Aaron were involved. She denied it too fast, said I was misunderstanding everything, said Aaron was just a friend. I asked if friends usually get introduced as boyfriends to provide cover at someone else's birthday party. She stopped talking for a second. That pause told me more than any confession would have. Then she started saying she did not owe me explanations. I told her she was right, she did not. But I wanted her to understand something. She stood in my house, ate my food, watched my wife and her lover move around under a fake story, and said nothing. Whatever she needed to call herself to sleep at night after that was her problem. I hung up first. Saturday, Emily came with her cousin, not with Aaron, which I noticed immediately. Maybe she had enough sense not to push things that far. Maybe even she understood there are some humiliations you do not stack on top of each other in plain daylight. When she walked through the front door, she looked smaller somehow, not softer, just reduced, like all the force she had shown on that porch had depended on Aaron's house being behind her. Here, in the place we had actually built together, she looked like someone visiting a life she had damaged beyond repair. Carly stayed in the living room the whole time, reading from her phone and not pretending warmth. I moved between rooms only when necessary. Emily packed in tight, efficient motions, avoiding my eyes. The air between us was terrible, full of every question not being asked. Finally, in the bedroom, while she was taking jewelry from the dresser, I asked it again. How long? This time, she answered, "A few months." I remember the exact feeling of hearing that. Not surprise. Collapse of a final defense, because some stupid, stubborn part of me had still hoped it had started recently, maybe around the time of the birthday, maybe some impulsive mess she got trapped in. A few months meant a parallel life, a season of lies, a long stretch of normal dinners, folded laundry, shared bed, small talk, all contaminated. I asked if Aaron had been with Nicole before this, or if Nicole had only been helping them cover. Emily said it was complicated. That answer made me laugh again, that flat, ugly laugh I had started doing when reality got too blunt. Complicated was one word for it. She said Aaron and Nicole had broken up before the cookout but were still, in her words, figuring things out. I asked whether that meant Nicole had agreed to play fake girlfriend in my backyard while my wife slipped around behind my back. Emily got irritated and said I was making it sound worse than it was. Worse than it was. I felt something in me go cold. There are phrases that end things more completely than admissions do because they expose the moral shape of the person saying them. Worse than it was. As if the offense lived mostly in my wording. As if the humiliation had layers I was unfairly emphasizing. I told her to stop talking. She did. Packed for another few minutes. Then, without looking at me, she said she had not planned for me to find out like that. That sentence nearly broke me. Not because it was sad, because it revealed so much. Her regret, as far as I could tell, was not what she had done. It was the ugliness of the discovery, the inconvenience of the timing, the mess of being caught through the very setup she thought was clever. I asked whether she had ever intended to tell me the truth. She said she had been trying to leave. Another rearrangement. Another way of making the affair sound like a transition problem instead of a betrayal problem. I asked why, if she was trying to leave, she did not do the decent thing first. She did not answer. She just zipped a bag and took it toward the door. That was the last real conversation we had in the house. After she left with the final load of boxes, the place felt cleaner and sadder at the same time, like a room after smoke clears. The damage is easier to see once the source is gone. The legal process started not long after. Emily did not fight much at first, which almost made me more suspicious. Then came the little frictions. Questions about furniture, about who had paid for what, about whether she could come back for a lamp, a kitchen mixer, a chair from the guest room. Every object started trying to become a stand-in for the larger theft, and I had to keep reminding myself not to make every spoon symbolic. My lawyer kept me focused. Document. Respond, briefly. Do not editorialize. Do not chase emotional justice through practical negotiations. That advice saved me more than once, because there were days when I wanted to unload every ugly detail in writing, to force Emily to read a full accounting of what she had done. But in legal spaces, emotional truth does not always travel well. It gets reduced, denied, filed, answered. So I kept most of it to myself and let the paperwork move. Around that time, I heard from Emily's sister. She called crying, saying she had only recently learned the full story and did not know what to say. I believed her mostly. She told me Emily had been staying partly with Aaron and partly bouncing between places before settling there for good. She also said their mother was devastated and embarrassed. I took no pleasure in hearing that. Family damage spreads sideways. Innocent people end up carrying shame they did not create. Then, about 3 weeks after I found them, I ran into Aaron in person. Not planned. I was at a hardware store buying a replacement lock for the back gate. I turned down an aisle and there he was, comparing drill bits like he had any right to exist inside ordinary life. He saw me the same second I saw him, and his whole body stiffened. For one long moment I imagined dropping everything and doing what I had not done on that porch. Instead, I walked toward him slowly and stopped about 4 feet away. I asked him whether he had anything at all to say. He looked around first, which told me all I needed to know about his courage. Then he muttered that things had gotten out of hand. Out of hand. I asked if that was what he called showing up to another man's birthday, pretending to be somebody else's boyfriend. He started saying he had not wanted it to happen like that. And once again, I heard that same pattern. Not remorse for the act, discomfort with the mess. I told him he had sat in my yard, eaten my food, and looked me in the face while sleeping with my wife. He said he had not been sleeping with her then. Then. That word caught everything. Maybe he realized too late what he had admitted, because he shut his mouth right after. But it was enough. It meant emotional cheating had likely become physical later, or he wanted me to think that to reduce what had happened at the cookout. Either way, it did not redeem a thing. I leaned in just enough that he knew I meant what I said next. I told him he should be grateful I still had enough self-control not to ruin both our lives in a store aisle. Then I stepped back and walked away. My hands were shaking by the time I got to the register. That night I sat in my house with the new lock on the counter and realized how much of the aftermath was not dramatic at all. It was built from small aftershocks, running into someone, finding an old photo in a drawer, reaching for a habit that no longer had a place to land. grief was not one clean wave. It was weather. About a month after the separation, I made one more choice that helped me. I stopped driving by the store where Emily worked. At first, I had told myself I was doing it for practical reasons, because it was on the way to a job site sometimes. That was a lie. I was looking for her car, looking for some sign of collapse, looking for proof that the affair had not made her happy. It was poison. Every time I passed that strip mall, I reopened something in myself. So I changed the route. It sounds small, but sometimes healing starts with refusing to rehearse your own injury. I also started cleaning out the house properly, not in a furious purge, more in phases. I boxed up the things that were hers and had somehow been left behind. I moved furniture around, repainted the bedroom because I could not stand how the walls held the old arrangement of our life. I gave away dishes we had picked together because every time I used one, I pictured her setting the table while already carrying secrets. Carly helped a lot. My mother, too. One Sunday, my mother came over with groceries and ended up standing in the kitchen telling me that being chosen badly by someone does not make you a fool. I did not fully believe her then, but I remember it because it was the first time somebody's comfort did not sound empty to me. The divorce moved faster than I expected after the first filings. There were no children, which simplified things. No huge assets, no dramatic custody war, just the slow legal untangling of a marriage that had already been morally broken before it was officially dissolved. Emily and I saw each other one last time in mediation. She looked tired, not glamorous, not triumphant, just worn down by consequences she had probably hoped to step around. At one point, while we waited in a conference room for paperwork, she said she never meant to hurt me this much. I looked at her and realized I finally had the distance to hear that sentence clearly. People say things like that as if harm is mostly a matter of intention, as if pain counts less when the person causing it did not set out with a written plan. But a long trail of selfish choices creates its own intention. You do not accidentally lie that many times. You do not accidentally build cover. You do not accidentally watch your husband host your affair partner and somehow miss the cruelty of it. So I told her the truth. I said the affair was one thing, but the disrespect was what killed everything. The way she did it. The way she let me stand there like a prop in my own life. The way she tried to make me feel crazy while she was already gone in her head. She cried quietly after I said that. I did not. Not because I was stronger, because by then I was finally past needing her tears to mean anything. The divorce became final a few months later. That day I came home with the signed documents, set them on the kitchen counter, and just stood there in silence for a long time. I had imagined feeling dramatic closure. Relief, maybe. Victory. Instead, what I felt was simpler and stranger. Space. Like a room after a heavy machine is removed. The floor is marked. The weight is gone. The emptiness is real. I wish I could say I transformed immediately after that. Started sleeping well. Started smiling again. Met somebody better. Learned a beautiful lesson in perfect wording. That is not what happened. For a while I was raw and suspicious and tired. I trusted nobody easily. I hated being asked whether I was back out there dating. People mean well when they ask things like that. But when betrayal is fresh, the idea of starting over can feel less hopeful than insulting. There were nights I still replayed the cookout in full. Emily arriving late, barely kissing me, hovering near them, going inside with them. Carly walking in on that den scene. Me standing at the grill, feeding a man who was helping dismantle my marriage. That became the mental thumbnail of the whole thing. Not the porch, not the paperwork, not the final decree. The grill. Me in my own backyard, working, hosting, trying to make a good night for everybody, while something rotten moved in plain sight just outside what I understood. That image took a long time to stop burning. But it did change eventually, not all at once, slowly. I stopped asking why people do things that degrade them too. Some answers are too thin to justify the damage anyway. I stopped searching for the exact starting date, the precise first lie, the first text, the first touch. There is a point where investigation becomes self-harm. Once I knew enough, more detail would not have restored a thing. I also stopped telling myself the story ended with me being rejected. That was important. Because for a long time, what sat heaviest in me was humiliation. The feeling that another man had been chosen over me, that I had somehow been measured and beaten. It took time to understand that what really happened was not a fair comparison in some honest contest. It was a collapse of character on their side and a collapse of trust on mine. That distinction mattered because it returned my dignity to me piece by piece. A year after the divorce, Carly invited me over for another birthday cookout. I almost did not go. The whole setup felt too close to the memory I hated most. Grill smoke, coolers, laughter drifting across a yard. But I went anyway because hiding from ordinary joy is how betrayal keeps collecting rent. At one point, Carly handed me a plate and said she was glad I had come. I stood there in her backyard with the evening light dropping and people talking around me, and I realized something I had not noticed happening. I was not bracing anymore, not the way I used to. The wound had not vanished. I do not think some things ever vanish completely, but it was no longer directing every room I entered. That night, driving home, I thought about the version of me on the porch outside Erin's house, weak in the knees, humiliated, barely able to speak after hearing my wife call another man babe. I had pitied that version of myself for a long time. But on that drive, I saw one thing differently. He left. He did not throw his life away in one violent burst. He did not beg. He did not stay where he was not respected. He left, then protected himself, then rebuilt. That may sound small to somebody who has never stood in that kind of wreckage. It is not small. Sometimes the only dignity available to you in the moment is the dignity of not becoming uglier than what hurt you. These days, I live quieter, more carefully too. I still value peace more than I used to. I understand now that love without respect becomes a trap fast. I understand that when somebody starts making you feel confused for noticing what is right in front of you, confusion itself becomes evidence. And I understand something else I wish I had known earlier. Betrayal usually announces itself before it confesses. In tone, in distance, in small evasions, in sudden anger where a simple answer should have been, "I do not hate Emily anymore." That surprised me the most. For a while I did. Then later I hated what she had done. Later still, even that cooled. What remains is not softness. It is clarity. She was willing to trade honesty for convenience until the lie got too heavy to carry cleanly. Aaron was willing to step into another man's house and benefit from deceit as long as he did not have to look too directly at himself. Nicole, whatever exact role she played, was willing to help reality wear a costume for one night. Those were their choices. Mine came after, and mine had to be better. I still think sometimes about that birthday and how it divided my life into a before and after. Before, I believed loyalty had a certain flaw beneath it. After, I understood some people will step below that flaw without warning if it suits them long enough. That knowledge cost me, but it also sharpened me. I do not ignore my instincts now just because I want peace. I do not let politeness override what my own eyes are trying to tell me. Most of all, I do not measure loneliness the same way anymore. Back then, after I found them, I swore I might stay alone the rest of my life because anything had to be better than that kind of humiliation. I meant it when I said it. In those first months, solitude felt safer than hope, and for a while maybe it was. But time has a way of sanding the absolutes off pain. I do not know exactly what the rest of my life will look like. I am not making dramatic promises anymore, not to myself and not against the world. What I know is simpler. I would rather sit alone in a quiet house with my dignity intact than share a bed with someone who makes me doubt my own reality. I would rather start over from nothing than stay where I am being lied to, and I would rather be wounded by the truth than comforted by a fake version of love built on disrespect. That was the real lesson, ugly as the tuition was. Emily did not just leave my marriage. She showed me in the harshest way possible the price of staying anywhere after respect has died. And once you learn that for real, once it hits bone, you never again confuse company with peace. What would you do in this situation? Be honest, or did this remind you of someone? Tell me in the comments. And if this made you think about your own relationship, I left something in the description that can help you build something stronger. Subscribe if you want more stories like this every day, and share this with someone who needs to hear this story.